Good morning. My name is Captain Mule. I'm with the East Brotherhood Police Department. I'm also the traffic commander there. And I've just learned about a serious incident involving a fight at Meadowlands Stadium during one of the football tailgates. I'll be responding there immediately and I'll be assuming command. But the first thing that I want to do is let you know that I'm going to be using an authoritative style of leadership in this incident because it's right before game time. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on, and I don't have time for debate. I also want to make sure that I'm going to use the most qualified person for the most important jobs, regardless of their rank. So I'm going to respond, I'm going to assume command, and I'm going to activate the ICS protocol. Now, what the ICS protocol does is it gives me access to more resources than I would normally have. It also provides for a unity of command for those resources. And lastly, it allows for better communication through the use of common terminology. Essentially, it's about interoperability, and we'll be using different kinds of resources in this incident, so it's going to be very helpful to use that. The next thing I want to do is set up an inner and an outer perimeter. Now, the inner perimeter around the crime scene where the assaults happened, and also by the point that we stopped the vehicle and made the arrests. The inner perimeter is basically going to allow the essential officers and investigators to do their job, while the outer perimeter provides a buffer zone between the public and the inner perimeter. Keep in mind, this is a football game, and there's going to be a lot of people, so we're going to have to really assign a lot of officers to that outer perimeter to keep the public away. Due to that, I'm going to request mutual aid from any surrounding jurisdiction, as well as call in our auxiliary officers, and then I'll also call in the next shift for East Rutherford. I'll call them in early, and I'll make sure that I hold over the existing shift. I'm also going to confirm that several notifications are being made, including EMS and paramedics to tend to the injured that were involved in this altercation, as well as notifications to our chief and the county prosecutor since there's a police officer involved. I'm also going to notify the New Jersey State Police because one of the officers that's involved is a state trooper, so I want to make sure that their command staff is notified. I'll also notify our internal affairs and also the county professional standards investigators so that they can respond and begin their investigation. And then I'll actually call our investigators from our detective bureau in to assist them and to make sure that witnesses and victims are separated and that statements are taken properly. I'm going to also ensure that the county prosecutor knows that this is a police officer involved because they're the lead investigative agency here, and they will take charge, and we will wait for their guidance to tell us what's the next step. Now, as of right now, since this is likely to be a large-scale event in terms of the number of people and the number of investigative units, I'm going to make sure that I establish a command post. I'm going to make sure that the command post is upwind, just in case there's any kind of gas or chemical substances that are interjected into this scenario, and I'll make sure that there's one officer that's assigned as the scribe so he can document what's going on for our after-action critique. I'll also use two officers to handle communications. One officer will handle radio communications and the other will handle telephone communications. That will allow me to focus on the task at hand. I'm also going to make sure that I invite other commanders from the different resources and utilities to meet at the command post and make themselves accessible to me so that I can make proper decisions with as much information as I possibly can get, and also so they can help communicate that information out to their jurisdictions and agencies. I'm going to request the mutual aid and auxiliary officers to respond to a staging area. The staging area has to be large enough to receive all of the resources that are going to be coming our way. It's also going to have a safety lane between the staging area and the inner perimeter, just so that in case we call for some sort of resource that they can get to the scene without any kind of obstacles and quickly. I'll make sure that I assign a lieutenant to that spot so that he can handle logistics, and I'll make sure that there's a separate area in the staging area for any media who who may be responding, and I'm sure that there will be. For that reason, I'm going to make sure that the public information officer is assigned to the staging area so that he can interact with the media. But I'm going to give him explicit instructions to give out information strictly in compliance with Executive Order 69. I'm going to request that barricades and auxiliary lighting be brought down by Public Works, just in case this turns into a protracted type of an event. It's going to get dark early since it's the fall, late fall or winter time. So I want to make sure that we have all those things at our disposal. I'm also going to notify SWAT to have them respond because again, there's going to be a lot of people coming out all at once, and we're going to have to use a lot of crowd control to keep people away. SWAT will have access to a lot of different equipment that we could utilize, such as goggles, some distraction devices if we need them. They have their tactical expertise, and that will be very valuable to me. So I'll make sure that we have them there as well. I'm going to notify all officers to turn on their body-worn cameras and to keep them rolling until instructed otherwise by a member of the prosecutor's office or a designee. I'm going to call a preliminary press conference to provide some basic information to the media that happens to respond or is already there for the game. And then I'm going to tell them the scheduled time and date when I'll be giving an update to that. And I'll ask the public information officer to send social media messages informing anyone who is responding to the game at this point, and also while they're people who are in the game already, so that they can understand there's going to be some traffic areas and places that they should avoid, and that there may be delays getting in and getting out due to this situation, but that we're trying as hard as we can to alleviate that. Now, regarding what I would do about the investigation, I'll make sure that I assign a supervisor to guide any of the responding officers who are going to be investigating this and responding to it, how to handle themselves, especially stressing that there should be no special treatment given to the trooper because he's a police officer. I'm going to contact the stadium security and request that all their surveillance video be held and that we be given access to it, and also to let them know exactly what's going on so that they can make their security plan and have that take action. I'm going to consult with the county prosecutor regarding any and all charges that all of the parties could be facing, such as the person who threw the beer can at the trooper's brother. He could be facing assault charges. For the trooper and his brother who beat the man, badly, aggravated assault. And then for the trooper, DWI charges, eluding, as well as possibly official misconduct. I'm going to make sure that I assure both victims that a thorough investigation will take place and confirm their information so that they can be provided with VINE notifications, victim information notification system every time. I'm going to order that all investigators who are taking statements make sure that they Mirandize the suspects prior to taking any statements. Of course, we're going to have a county prosecutor's authorization to do that, and suggest that since there could be criminal and administrative charges, that we run a bifurcated investigation. In a bifurcated investigation, the county prosecutor typically handles criminal charges, and the departmental investigators handle administrative charges. So we'll want to make sure that that's happening, at least for the trooper that's involved. Now, regarding what I would do in the future, I would make sure that I conducted a follow-up press conference so that we can address the progress of the investigation and explain exactly where we're going with this. Again, information only to be given in strict compliance with Executive Order 69. I'm going to assign all units who assisted with traffic to make sure that they're trying to get the traffic out when the game lets out. That's going to be a big undertaking. So I'll devote a lot of resources there and definitely make sure that we have assistance from the state police, from New Jersey Transit, from any other agency who could help us to get those people out of the stadium quickly as possible. I'm going to make sure that I assign a lieutenant to review all the reports before they're turned in, before they're approved, to make sure that they're up to spec. When the scene has been stabilized and the investigation is complete, I'm going to make sure that all units return back into service, and also have all of the agencies notified who also provided us with assistance that they can send their units back into service. I'm going to make sure that I conduct a critical incident critique, And I'm going to focus on our response as it pertains to handling incidents that involve police officers, which is also covered in the Attorney General guidelines. The protection of a large crime scene and the processing of evidence when it's a situation like this, and then also asking about any equipment or training that would help us to handle a situation like this better. I'm going to refer all officers who responded to post-traumatic stress debriefing. Now, it involves a trooper who is likely in a little bit of trouble, and there's a lot of officers that may be affected by that. So I want to make sure that within 24 to 72 hours, they talk to a counselor and they're able to at least get some support about what they're feeling. I'm going to make sure that I schedule a community meeting because I want to know what the key stakeholders, some politicians, and members of the law enforcement community and the public, of course. I want to address any of their concerns and make sure that we have the media there because I'm sure they'll be very interested in the investigation as well. We want to make sure that they're included. I'm going to also conduct a department-wide policy review because I want to identify any deficiencies and order any training that can be designed to help us in the future with our departmental response. I won't forget to write thank you letters to any agencies that assisted us, and I'll make sure to identify any of our officers who distinguished themselves during this incident. I'll make sure that I commend them in public. And if there's other officers that we found, maybe fell short of our expectations, I'll make sure that I get them counseling and retraining, but I'll make sure that I'll do that in private. Now, in conclusion, I was tasked with designing and implementing a response to a situation that had many challenges. In order to meet those challenges, I used many resources, both from within the police department and also from outside of it. I also used my education, my training, and my experience to formulate this comprehensive response. While I initially focused on the problem and my response to the problem, I also looked at some collateral issues, which may have contributed to the situation. The goal here is to cure the disease and not just treat the symptoms. I also understand that training must always be considered whenever officers engage in inappropriate conduct. Now, it might not be our officer who was involved in this fight, but our officers responded, and I'm sure there's always the temptation to look at things maybe a little bit differently. So we